So firstly, how are you today, Stephen?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good.
That's
Good.
good. That's good. And great to see everyone on here. Welcome guys to tonight's interview. Yeah, I guess I'll start off just by explaining why we decided to do this interview and exactly what it is. So pretty much I actually asked Stephen last week, I think it was, to do an interview on this topic. The reason we did that was because we actually put up you might not know this, Stephen, but we actually put up a reel on Instagram that you did, something tips that you shared on the economy update last week, where you were sharing your employee program you ran for the money management. And that actually got like, it got a lot of traction, like 14,000 views or so. And so I just saw that that's a topic a lot of people are interested to know. Money management. We were actually talking about it on yesterday's economy update that people just don't get taught it. And it's why we see a lot of people struggling in today's world. And especially when you see a looming recession, it's just going to hit harder and people are going to be even more caught out. So it's great to see everyone on here just because we know a lot of people are nervous around their finances with a recession coming. And it's an area that a lot of people want to get on top of. So I'm personally really looking forward to this interview because I think there's going to be a lot we'll be able to take from it, just from the perspective of how you can organize your wealth better, how you can actually use your money and income to save and think long term rather than just kind of spending at the pub as a lot of people do. As hard as it is to resist a palmy and a pint, sometimes you've got to be more organized and disciplined than that, especially when a recession is coming. So I'll share a little bit more about what this interview will be about. And as we go along, you guys will pick up the idea, but that's the general gist of it all. So anything from you, Stephen, before we actually kick things off?
No, I'm looking forward to this. My lighting is terrible in this hotel room, but we will prevail.
No, that's all good. I think everyone's here for you anyway, not your lighting.
Yeah.
So yeah, good to see Jeff from Brisbane, Courtney from Brisbane. We're from Vegas. Yeah, got quite a few people from Brisbane. So I may as well follow the routine. If everyone else wants to chuck in where you're from, it would be good to get an idea of where everyone's listening in from, because I noticed a few people here from Perth. And I've noticed a few other people I haven't really seen before. So it would just be good to get an idea of locations. Taroom, Queensland from Suzanne, Perth from Neil, Albany, Perth. Yeah, WA crew, let's get this going. Brisbane. Seems like most people are from Brisbane, so you'd probably like that, Stephen. I know you're a big fan of the Queensland and sunny coast.
Very much so.
Yeah, New South Wales, Adelaide, Gold Coast. So yeah, good to see different parts of Australia, especially. So we're all over the place in Australia, all one big country, and all got the same goals. So may as well get straight into it. So what I've done, so everyone knows, is Stephen and I, when we go through these points, we've actually got a PowerPoint that I'll be sharing. It just means that for people who join late, they'll be able to see what topic we're actually talking about. And for people listening, you'll also be able to kind of get a bit of a general idea of notes that Stephen will be talking about. So if you want to take notes, like handwritten is always best if you're wanting to do that. Just because the mind-body connection, handwritten notes are always good, and you'll be able to use the PowerPoints we've done up to actually see where we're at and what we're discussing. So what I'll do now is I'll share my screen, and we can pretty much get straight into it. So yeah, what we're talking about today is money management times of crisis. And the reason we've called it times of crisis is more because, as we know, the times we're currently in is crisis is an understatement. For those of you that come on the economy update, you can see what I mean by that, because there's so much shit going on in the world, and crisis is an easy way to put it. So money management in these times is going to be so important. And Stephen's going to be sharing his tips around how you can actually better organize your wealth, whether you're looking to build more long-term, whether you're just kind of feeling a bit messy or unstructured with your finances, and just how you can get on top of it. So I wrote an email that unorganized finances is pretty much like health. If you're kind of, if you eat what you feel like, you exercise on days you feel like it and don't do it, and you don't have a clear routine of what you do every day with your health, and you're not tracking your weight or anything like that, you're not going to get any results, and finances are no different. So before I get started, most of you on here will probably be able to read this off heart with me, just the amount of times you've probably heard this. But yeah, we always do give disclaimers just because it's not just there for legal reasons. We do genuinely mean that. Stephen, Warren, myself, and everyone at Global Wealth Club, we actually don't have any interest in providing specific advice because we know that if we provide the wrong advice to you, then we'd be liable for that, and you'd probably, and we'd probably feel bad giving the wrong advice. So we do genuinely mean that. Everything we do is purely for education, and because we're all here to empower you, and yeah, we're not giving advice. So if you are looking for that, you're best off to see a licensed professional in the area. But now that that's out of the way, we'll now kick things off and get into our first question. So financial management, bank accounts, this is the first one we'll be covering, Stephen, and you actually touched on this last week in our economy update. But one thing a lot of people do is they manage their money through one bank account or two bank accounts without any clear purpose. And we often see, especially people who are starting out in finances and who've never been taught financial literacy and never been educated around that, what happens to them is they get paid a salary, and they spend money at a pub and realize they're like $4 short on rent by the end of the week, and they're often left in that position. So from your opinion, working with a lot of different people and from what you've studied yourself, what's your opinion on bank accounts? Like, how many should people have, and what purposes should you be focusing on for each bank account?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and it's something that it really should be looked at. Everyone should have multiple bank accounts. So I use a 3 bank account system in my own life, as well as what we help employees with and that sort of stuff. And in our business, we're happy to split your pay across 3 different bank accounts for you, so that you can take this on. So when I say 3 different bank accounts, I'm actually really talking about 3 different accounts with 3 different banks, right? And when we're talking, this is not about saving money and all that sort of stuff. This is about management, all right? So what we have is three accounts. Normally, sometimes 3 different banks, but sometimes you might have 2 of the accounts at one bank or so off. But I like 3 different banks. This makes it harder to get access to, right? So your first bank account is your essentials bank account. This is the account that your rent, your savings, your utilities must have deducted expenses, things that are going to be automatically deducted out of a bank account on a certain date: car payment, credit card payment, school payments, all this sort of stuff. And so this is what we call the essential account. This account won't have a debit card or any card associated with it. It is purely and simply there to have direct debits taken out of it, especially things, as I said, like your rent, and your phone bill and all that sort of stuff. So that's your essentials account. The second account is like a general savings emergency account. I like the Christmas Club accounts. A lot of the times, the only people that have these Christmas Club style accounts now are credit unions, or some of the smaller, like the Heritages and that sort of stuff. Check with them if they've got them. So what I like about these is you pretty much can only get to them one time a year, and that's Christmas, right? And it's really there to say you save, and then you buy it. The other thing that you can do with this, especially say you're trying to buy, I don't know, you need a new TV or something, or you need a new laptop. One of the ways to do it is actually use a lay-by account, right? And a lay-by account is all about you put $5 a week into it, and you can't get it back out until you've actually got the money to take that product. It used to be pre-credit card, afterpay, and pre any of this sort of stuff. All the major retail stores used to do it, and I think that's something that should be brought back. Because too many people go into debt and not be able to afford a luxury like a laptop for their kids or something like that. So that's the second account. The third account, it's really two accounts at the same bank, right? One of them has a card, a debit card attached to it, and the other one has no card. So what you do is you get your employer to put, say you have $1,000 a week. You get all your essential money put into the essential account, so it gets automatically deducted, whether it's at the end of the month or end of the week or whenever it is. You then get the next amount to go into your general savings and in your emergency account, and then your general spending account is what's left of your week. So if you have $1,000 a week coming in, and say you've got $600 a week that goes to your essentials, then you have $200 a week that goes to your savings emergency account, and then the balance goes to your general spending and saving account. Now, the reason that I like the one with the card and one without the card is you get the money deposited into the account that doesn't have the card associated with it, and you have to then go in, online or through your bank app and transfer that money from one account to the other. So there's a physical transfer of that money. So you're aware, I'm transferring $200, or hey, I'm transferring that. Now, the other thing that if you want to add another step to it, and this comes down to discipline, remember convenience is the devil in most of our lives these days. So you transfer, say, $200 or $100 from your general spending account with no card to the one with a card, and then you go and withdraw $75 from the ATM machine, and then every time you go and spend something, spend money on it, you actually physically pay cash. That way, you really know what your spending is, right? And you can get a really good grasp on your spending and what you're trying to achieve, and that's where you go. I pretty much do this. I have another step in there because I use actually a credit card, not a debit card. And the reason I use a credit card, not a debit card for most transactions is, one, I'm getting frequent flyer points, but two, if there is a malicious transaction on that credit card, and meanwhile, I'm talking about a credit card that's only got like a $4,000 or $5,000 limit on it, not a lot, is that if there is, say you buy something online or someone skims that card, there's a maximum limit they can get. Plus, if it is a fraudulent transaction, the bank will cover it, right? So where if it's a debit card that gets skimmed, you basically got no recourse against the bank. So that's the reason I like a credit card with a very strict limit and a very, very strict spending regime around it. And it's paid off every month. Sometimes I'll pay mine off during the month just so it's got no balance on it. And that's just a mental thing. And then I know, because I also like cash, I then carry cash with me, and then I physically know. And that's why the other day I was out and I went, holy shit, that's expensive. And it was, I was buying a coffee and was I buying a coffee and a sandwich? And it was like, buddy, $18 or something. I'm like, holy shit, that's expensive, right? And it clicks your mind into, holy shit, this is where every one of my dollars is going, and every dollar then becomes sacred. Where if you're used to just zapping it away and not actually following what you're doing, there's no connection there. So you lose the connection with your money. So that's why I like this sort of three-hub bank accounts. I know people that go up to as many as 5 accounts and really break it down and make sure that they've got stuff really, really covered. Like I know there's a woman in the US who does a lot of work in the African-American communities around teaching financial literacy, and she uses a 5 bank account method. and because she splits the savings and the emergency account into two, and she splits the essential accounts into two. So, yeah, so then you end up with 5 accounts.
Yeah. What about like holidays, or if someone's wanting to travel and save up for more high-end expenses like that and just luxuries, would that go into this account here or that one, or where would you kind of fit that in?
So normally that would go into the savings and emergency account, and this is where some people actually split those two accounts, is so that they have one that is pure savings for the future, and then that might be linked to like an investment platform, like an ING Direct that's then investing it into, say, a mutual fund or a S&P index or something, like Acorn. There's quite a few of them around. One of the other ones that I actually don't mind is when you spend the round up things, where it takes the money and it rounds up to the nearest dollar and spits it into a savings thing, especially for someone young. As we all know, it's actually time in the savings world that maximizes the amount of money that you're going to have at retirement. So, and I'm just trying to think of there's a couple of examples around where, and there's some good ones on YouTube and that, where the guys talk about, if you started saving $1,000, say $1,000 a quarter, $4,000 a year when you first start a job at, say, 18, and you kept investing that for your entire life until you retired at 60, that nest egg would be around $6 or $7 million. And all you've given up is $4,000 a year. I'm sure pretty much anyone, if you put your head to it and worked out how you were living, could save $4,000 a year. So,
yeah, for sure. So how about investing? Would you separate like investment savings to the emergency account, for example?
Yeah, out of this one I do, because normally what I say is build up your emergency fund, so it's like, say 8 weeks worth of your expenditure, right? And then anything over that 8 weeks, you then start putting into investments, like these long-term hold investments, or have your next same thing for a holiday or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, if anyone has questions, by the way, pop up, just feel free to put them in the Q&A box, because comments might get missed. Probably not, but more just for precaution, Q&A box is generally better. But the next question we have here for you, Stephen, is around spending money, because especially on a recession, or when people are getting more tight with their finances, with interest rates rising and cost of living, people are more cautious of where they spend money. And like we were talking about yesterday, the value for money tends to be a lot different to when times are normal. So the question we have here is, where would you spend your money in a recession compared to normal?
Yeah, so and pretty much it doesn't matter. The rule that I work for doesn't really matter whether it's a recession or not. The only thing that I look at is if money's tight and there's a recession going on and all that sort of stuff, is knowing where every dollar that you've got is being spent. So normally the rule of thumb is pay yourself first, pay your debts, and then look at anything else, right? And what do we mean by paying yourself first? So paying yourself first means paying yourself money that you're covering your essentials, right? And you're putting some away in savings and investing, and then you're paying off things like credit card debt and all the debt that you might have, like HEX debt and all that sort of stuff. You're paying all that sort of stuff down, and then if there's anything left, use that for your niceties and that. So as we said with the 3 bank accounts, making sure that you're paying yourself first. So you're covering your essentials and your living. you're paying off your debts, right? And you can break them down into minimum and then go for other things and that sort of stuff.
So really it's just a matter of like first paying yourself first and then just organizing everything else like the debts, expenses, and making sure you don't fall behind on all of that.
On all that sort of stuff. And look, I noticed you got the tip there. I use this myself. And pretty much my life fits in. One, it can fit into my car, but it fits into 2 duffel bags, a carry-on bag, a general overnight bag, and my briefcase. Pretty much all my daily things fit into that. Keepsakes, bits and pieces that I've picked up over life, like photos and all that sort of stuff. They've all been digitized and saved online. Stuff from when my parents were alive, knickknacks and all that sort of stuff have been distributed out through the family. I'm not carrying them around. I'm not a very sentimental person either, so I don't get attached to a lot of that sort of stuff. I don't get attached to things of that nature very easily. So have a look around your home. Most people in their home hoard way too much, right? You'd probably be able to go through your home, look at stuff that you haven't used in 6 months. So sometimes I use a 3-month rule, and a lot of this come about from when I was in the Navy. You know, you live on a ship for 8 months of the year, you haven't got a lot of room to store shit, right? And it fits into what we used to call the coffin underneath your rack. And there's not a lot of room to store a lot of shit. But, you know, you might have 2 pairs of shoes where if you have a look around, a lot of people have 10 pairs of shoes and they don't wear 6 pairs of them. So get rid of them, you know, sell them, take them to Vinnie's and all that sort of stuff. The other things that people have is they store shit in the storage shed, right? Great for people who are running storage businesses because we store a whole heap of shit. But if you've got a storage shed, when was the last time you went and had a look at it? When was the last time you actually went down and sorted through it and said, I can get rid of some of this shit, right? So that's what it was. Have a look at memberships and extra data services you're paying for. Analyze your credit card bill. I bet you could find, and I've just done it, right? I was sitting around the other night and all of a sudden a notification come ping. Your credit card has been pinged for this. It was a $9.99 subscription for some service. And I looked at it and went, what the flaming hell is that? Oh, fuck, I haven't used that in 6 months. So I immediately went online and cancelled it, right? It saves me $9.99 a month. There's probably another 5 of those and everyone's probably got 4 or 5 of those that you could cancel, right? And you could cancel it tomorrow and it's not going to change your life. Not going to change your life one iota.
A good example of that, like $9.99 that came to mind was like, I was billed like $9.99 for a Uber membership. I was like, when did I even set up an Uber membership? So then I went to cancel that because you get sneaky bills like that sometimes. I don't know how that happened, but
and you sign up to a free magazine and then all of a sudden they're subscribing you for $2.99 a month.
Yeah.
Right. And you've read the magazine once and never gone back to it. So things like that. There was one woman that I watched on YouTube when I was doing some research for some spending stuff. And when they worked out her budget, she was paying like $300 or $300, $400 a month, right, which was pretty much her rent in subscriptions that she never used. Gym memberships, she like a video membership, download video membership. There was all this stuff, and I'm like, holy shit, you know, a cookbook recipe membership. That was the one that stood out the most. I'm thinking, a cookbook recipe? I didn't even know that thing existed, but apparently it sends you a new recipe every month. There's something for you to try. So have a look at all these things that are in your life, and a lot of it could be digital these days. So get rid of a lot of the digital stuff. You've probably got an extra phone service that you don't need, right? So get rid of the phone service. And one of the decisions we made with my parents was they had a landline and a mobile phone. Well, we just got rid of the landline. There was no need for the landline. No one rung them on the landline, right? Everyone rung them on their mobiles. So, well, we can get rid of that. Gone, next, and that made a saving. Internet, right? With the way internet's gone these days, especially with streaming services and that, and having data on your phone. One of the things that we did is we had internet at home, right, at mum and dad's place, and we had like 500 gig of data on our phone thing. So what we ended up doing is getting rid of the fixed internet service that was coming into the house, and just getting a proper data device, and sharing, and then getting all the phones' data shared between each other, so that they could use that. They hardly streamed anything. They just watched normal TV most of the time, if they did that, or they just read. So you can have a look in your life and really streamline a lot of the stuff that you're looking at, and save. If you save yourself $20-30 a week, put that away into your emergency fund or into your savings account, mate. That adds up pretty quickly. So,
for sure. So, next one we have here kind of follows on from what we were just talking about, especially when you basically just breaking down what we were just talking about. And I know you like to break down your expenses because it's you have different types of expense categories, and from there you're able to work out which ones you can cut out, which ones you actually need to keep, and then make decisions from there. So in your mind, how do you categorize your expenses and work out which ones to keep and which ones to cut?
Yeah, so I break expenses down into three areas. Essentials, so these are must-haves, food, rent, utilities, transport, right? Food, shelter, utilities, clothing, the basics, right? The next is likes, right? So I would like to have extra data on my phone, or I'd like to have international roaming, or I'd like to have Netflix, or I'd like to have nicer clothes, right? And then you break the last thing down into wants. I'd want a holiday, or I want an international vacation. I'd want a top-end car, BMW or something, when a Toyota would do. I want a new handbag, and really have a look at your expenses. And we've turned into and Amazon is Amazon and Target and Kmart, and all this online shopping has made all this stuff so much easier, because we don't have connection with money anymore. So make sure that when you're looking at your essentials, when you're looking at your expenditure, is break out what is essential, stuff that you must have to survive, right? The basics. Then work out what you like and then what you want. There, once again, other people break it down into more categories, but I pretty much find if you keep everything to the simple rules of three, you can easily do it, and then away you go. Normally, if it ends up in the want pile, just put a big red line through it. If it ends up in the likes pile, actually go through and work out what you don't need, right? And if you're struggling, say at the moment you are really struggling to make ends meet, one of the tips that I've got, especially for clothes, not like me, but if you're a normal sized person, actually go to Vinnie's and the Salvos and the op shops, or the clothes recycling centres, mate, because they have a lot of clothes there where people have never worn them. I walked through a Vinnie's when after my mum died. I gave a lot of stuff to the Salvos and Vinnies. And on one of the trips, I went and had a look around what was actually there because I knew what Mum had. Mum had shirts, so silk shirts made in Bangkok that were still in the cellophane wrapper from when they were made, right? And she just wore, so say we had 8 made, she just wore 4 or 5 of them to death, and there were still 3 of them that were perfectly good. So you go to the op shop, you can find this sort of stuff, and they may charge you $5 for it when that was a $200 shirt or it was a $100 shirt. Brand name stuff. There's stores around now that specialize in secondhand bags, and a friend of mine, his wife, she loves her Pradas and she loves all that, Gucci and all those bags, but she's never bought a new one straight out of the store. She's gone to these secondhand stores or these recycling stores where people have used them once or twice, especially in the upmarket areas in Sydney and Melbourne and that, where God forbid that you're caught with the same bag or wearing the same dress twice. And they give it away or sell it into these stores, and then you're getting it at a 50% discount. And it's been used twice. Right? So really, if you are struggling to make rents or you're just a bit frugal, go and have a look at different places to buy stuff, and only really buy what you need, because we really clog up our homes and our closets and all that sort of stuff with just shit that we don't need. So there you go.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So really, the idea behind a lot of it is just be as minimalistic as you can, more just having the stuff that you genuinely need. And then if there's things that you want or like, there's always, not always, but most likely going to be a lot of alternative ways to actually pay for it at a lot lower price than what you do if you just go the mainstream route.
Yeah. So a friend of mine, him and his wife, what they do is they sell something before they buy something, for instance. So, for instance, he wanted a new golf club. So he went through all his crap and found out he had 3 golf clubs there that he never used. So he sold those and used that and put that money towards the new one. So that's the rule that they've put in place, is they will sell something before they buy something else rather than just having it clutter, which is a really good way of doing it.
And I noticed another way a lot of people find cheaper stuff as well is through private sellers like Facebook Marketplace or other areas like that, because you always get it cheaper just buying it direct than having to go through like a middleman or corporate service.
Yeah, 100%. And a lot of times, people sell, as I said, people sell stuff that they've never worn. Tags are still on it. They've worn it once. Jackets. What was the other thing that was ski gear? People go on a ski holiday, they go once, find out that they hate the fucking snow, which I do, I fucking dread it, and so they've bought all the gear and then it sits around in their closet, right? They've worn it once. You've worn it one holiday, maybe 4 times on a holiday, right? So get rid of it. You're never going to use it again. Right, and other people will buy it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I guess that kind of like brought up another thought too from what you were saying. There's also, if you're looking for things that people haven't really used and you're looking to buy, I guess you can do it in reverse as well. If there's something that you haven't used in a long time and probably won't ever use, might be a good way to make a little bit of extra cash, especially if you're tight, if you sell it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah, and it's amazing how freeing it is by going through all your shit and going, fuck, I don't need that, don't need that, don't need that. Twaddle off down to the cash converters and get some hard-earned cash for it. Right.
Yeah, definitely. So it can go both ways.
Yeah.
So next question we have here is, this is actually an interesting one, because people have thought this before. I think I remember when I was first introduced to the idea of an emergency fund, I kind of wondered why it was essential. But after hearing the reasons, you can easily see why, especially experiencing something like COVID. But I'll let you share more on that. So, in your opinion, Stephen, why do you see an emergency fund? And when I say that, I'm talking about the one where we look at 8 months worth of expenses. That's what we consider an emergency fund. So why do you see that as a non-negotiable bank account or for good financial management and successful money management strategy?
Yeah, so for me, this is a must-have, and it's a must-have for anyone. And for me, I have it in broken down into like physical cash, some gold, silver coins that I carry on me or have with me, and then a bank account for it. And the reason that I have physical cash and I have the gold and silver is because I travel so much, I've been caught out. I was caught out in New York when they had the massive blackouts over there, and teller machines weren't working and credit card machines couldn't be processed. And even though that they managed to get lights and elevators and that working, a lot of the payment processing systems didn't come back online for several days, right? Because those sort of networks, they just didn't get back up and running straight away. But because I had cash and I had gold and silver, I could just pay stuff in cash. Right, I just say to the guy, I want this. Can I pay in cash? Right, I want that. Can I do this? We found jewelers in New York, especially in New York, that we could take our gold coins to, and the guys will give us cash for it. Meanwhile, the exchange rate wasn't very good. I think at the time the gold was worth around $1,000 an ounce. And we were getting like $750 per coin, so it was a 25% hit. But hey, it was a buyer's market for that type of item. We wanted the cash, and they had the cash to give. So it allows you to then spend. The other thing is the other reason that you have a big emergency fund available is so you're not dipping into your long-term savings. So one of the things that most people go is, I've got savings there or investments, and I'll dip into those, right? I'll dip into those. I'll dip into those if I have a major thing. But now, if you're using the compounding rule, you never want to dip into that. You never want to get rid of your capital base, right? It might be all right to get rid of some of the profit you got, but if you're using the compounding effect over 20, 30 years, you never want to dip into what is your essential savings, right? You always want to be adding onto the top of it all the time. So if you've got an emergency fund that is set up on the side, well, that emergency fund is what you dip in and out of to pay for your broken down car, your broken laptop, your stolen phone, or whatever. Your fridge that's broken, your washing machine that's broken, whatever, and then you top it back up again, and then you put you put the surplus back into your savings. So you never touch your savings. You never touch that investment savings. So the emergency buffer account is there to be an emergency buffer, right? It sits there, it fluctuates, goes up and down as the emergencies arrive. So you're not eroding your investment capital base.
Yeah, that makes sense. And following on from what you were saying about that, when you were talking about bills that come up when you least expect it, or to pay off a major bill like a car repair or something like that, another example I'll give of this was actually the situation that kind of opened my eyes to the importance of an emergency fund, because those of you on this listening here that know Connor, like Connor, Stephen, before he worked here at Global Wealth Club, he was actually working as a personal trainer. This was in about 2019 or 2020. He learned this stuff in around 2017 or 16 when he first started his education in finances. And he actually set up his own emergency fund, about 3 months worth of expenses, I think it was. And when he was a personal trainer, obviously everyone knows as a PT, you can't make income unless you're actually training people or you're physically there. Once COVID hit, we all know like a lot of jobs were shut down for about 8 weeks or however it was when we had the lockdowns. And pretty much every other personal trainer at the gym was living hand to mouth, and they were panicking because they actually had no way of producing income. Whereas Connor was there relaxed because he actually had a nest egg that he saved up for over the past few years, and he was quite stress-free through the whole experience, whereas a lot of the other PTs at the gym were stressing. They were struggling to pay their rent because they just literally had no job when all the lockdowns were happening. So there's a lot of black swan events that can happen, maybe not on that level quite often, but there's a lot of things that can happen when you least expect, and having an emergency fund kind of prepares you for that.
So most people in their bank account, and look, what we're talking about here is we're not talking about the person that's already independently wealthy or got their shit together. We're talking about the people that have no idea about finances, who are struggling to make ends meet as it is, about putting some frameworks around, simple, easy frameworks around it that they can do to move themselves up the next ladder, right? That's who we're talking to here. Right. So if you're thinking, oh, yeah, this is crap, I've already got this, I've got enough, blah, 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 I've got 8 streams of income, blah, blah, blah. Well, we're really not talking to you, but there's probably some tips here that you can use anyway, right? But really who we're talking to are the people like the Connors of the world and the private trainers and the chippies and the people out there that are literally living paycheck to paycheck, right? Most Australians and most people in the developing world basically have, I forget what it is. It's only like 3 weeks worth of money that they can get their hands on to survive. 3 weeks. That's it. Right? That's not enough. Not enough. I'd be now in these uncertain times, I'd be building out my emergency fund to cover about minimum 8 weeks. Minimum 8 weeks. But I'd be taking that as far out to 16, 20 weeks, if you could, just shy of 6 months, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future.
The way I see it as well is like the main message of this is to people who are in that position, like Stephen said, but even I actually like what you did, Stephen, like with your employee program, which is what gave me the idea to do this, is because if there are people listening to this who actually have multiple sources of income or who are business owners, then one way you can actually give back, because we always talk about legacy, is actually by teaching this stuff to your employees or people around you. And it can make a big difference in people's lives, especially people who have never been taught this. I know you did that, Stephen. You actually helped your employees learn this stuff, because even though you had this set up yourself, you knew they didn't. So you took the initiative on yourself to do that. And I think if we had a lot more employers who thought that way, the country would be in a much better position than it is now.
And look, we had and what sparked me and mum and dad when we were running out the family manufacturing business to actually do it was that we would have employees come to us, oh, can I get an advance on my wage, right? Or they would end up with a garnishing order from a court because they hadn't been paying their rent and child support, right? So we would then, sit down with them and say, this is totally voluntary, blah, 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 blah. But how about we do X, Y, Z, right? Would that improve your life, right? And I would say out of all the workforce that we had, we probably had an 85% take-up rate, right, of people that we actually did it. Okay, it was a bit more administration for us. It was a bit more processing of putting stuff together at the admin side. But, hey, once we had the systems in place, it was automatic. Just boom, 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 bang, 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 and that really changed people's lives. So go and talk to your employer if they're not offering it, and say, hey, is this something that you would do for me?
Yeah, I think that's really good, because a lot of people complain about issues in the country, but yet they do nothing to actually help solve it. And that's one what a lot of business owners can help with.
Yeah, 100%.
So, and I noticed a few questions in the chat box. So just so you guys know, I'm not ignoring them. We're going to wait till the end to take questions just so we can move through this. And then once all these points are covered, we'll take questions in the Q&A box. So the next one we have here, Stephen, is how do you know what things you should be prioritizing in your money management? So pretty much following on from before, when you break down your expense categories, then how do you actually know which ones to prioritize?
Well, so it's quite simple, right? Prioritizing, and you can't save a drowning man if you're drowning yourself, right? So the first thing to prioritize is what is essential to live, right? Now, and it could be that you've actually got to change some of those items. You might be paying for a BMW when a Toyota will do. You may be living in a 6-bedroom house and it's just you when a 1-bedroom studio will do. So the first thing you need to do is prioritize, do I need it? Is what I'm paying in my essentials worth it, right? Then the next thing, of course, is debts, right? Because debts can drown you. And by reorganizing your debts with your debtors, one of the things that we do, and we do it in business and we do it in I do it in my personal life, and other people in my network do it in our personal lives, is look at things where you can do structured payments, right? Instead of trying to find a tax bill where you've got to pay 35 grand up front, break it down into 7 $5,000 payments, right? The tax office will work with you on that sort of stuff. Merge all your debts together to get a lower interest rate. That's one way of restructuring them. Or the other thing could be that you can defer. You might be able to take a deferral on a couple of debts and pay off some of the smaller ones quickly, so you can then focus on the larger ones later. So there's definitely a thing there. But as I said, always pay yourself first. Cover your essentials and put a little bit away into your emergency fund. Cover your debts, and then the rest is expenses. Is covering your discretionary expenses, I should say. Right.
Yeah, these are the notes which pretty much follow on from what you say, is that basically living within your means is the easiest way to think about it, especially when you look at debt. Like, most people who don't necessarily have a high income tend to spend a lot more than they're making, or at least live way beyond their means with things. So the notes we have here is drive a car that you paid for in cash and that does the job. So in other words, just a car that gets you from A to B. Live in a home that does the job, rather than trying to live in like a 5-star or massive mansion when you really may not need that. Modest clothing and eat less takeout. Another common one I noticed, especially a lot of people were doing in COVID when they were saving money, is rather than going for a lot of takeout coffee, a lot of people bought their own coffee machines, even stuff like that, to minimize microtransactions, because even though $6 a day on coffee or so doesn't seem like much, it all adds up over the week.
Exactly. And especially if so say you have 20 coffees a week, that's $120 a week. Now imagine if you put that, say you went half, right, and brought it back to 10 coffees a week, and then the other 60 was automatically put away into a savings or an emergency fund, right, or even an investment fund. It would change your life over the long period of time. The other thing is, and it's the bottom line here on this slide, is sacrifice now to have the big reward later on. The big thing that's happened in society now, and look, I've fallen into this trap, and a lot of people fall into this trap, is we want the instant gratification, right? None of us are immune from it. We all love it. We all want it. It's a human nature thing. But sacrifice now. You know, imagine, God, if I could go right back to when I was in the Navy, instead of pissing the entire paycheck away, like I did with most of the guys, and put half of that paycheck away, I'd be in a 20 times better position than what I am now. And I know this stuff, right? So if I know this stuff, and I've worked this stuff out over the last 20, 25 years, and have started putting the practice, if I did that for the first 10, 15 years of my working life, man, you'd be a lot further ahead. So just make the sacrifices early, get instant gratification under control, have a look at what you're doing. You know, one of my mentors, you have a look at him and you would swear that the guy's a bum, right? He wears suits and that he basically go all the way to their threadbare. He drives a rickety old Commodore. He's got he lives in a very modest house, and he sorry guys, let me just
Yeah, while you do that, actually reminds me of, I can't remember the guy's name. I think it might have been Ronald Reed or something like that. I read an article on him who worked as a janitor his whole life and then retired off millions. And a lot of people who saw him assumed he was like a homeless person, like a homeless person in the streets. And then little did they know he had this $1 million worth of property as his nest egg.
Yeah.
That's
there's a woman in Sydney who's worked at McDonald's all her life and has a multi-million-dollar property portfolio, right? And it's all because of using these simple techniques, and then you end up with lots of money. So,
yeah, and I agree with sacrifices. Most people aren't willing to make that. They'd rather, especially young people, they'd rather go out on the weekend party and stuff and live it up, as you know.
Oh yeah, of course, you know, and that's you know, shit. You know, you do it because that's what everyone else is doing, right? And the guy that isn't doing it and is structuring his life properly, everyone looks at and goes, "Oh, weirdo," right? But no, he's the one that's going to end up, you know, ruling the world. So.
Yeah, definitely. This is a big one, especially from someone experienced like you, and for people who are new to budgeting. What are some common mistakes you see people make when they're either budgeting, like looking to cut expenses, or when they're looking to manage their money to grow long-term wealth?
Yeah, so the number one thing is they don't budget, right? The number two thing is they do a budget once and then never ever refine it and go back to it. And this has become a really big thing is people don't have a budget in place in the first place, or they don't have an idea of where their money's going in the first place. They aren't tracking their expenses against the budget and measuring, you know, I went over here, I went under here, so I can adjust my budget and work on that. Now, how do you get a budget? What I would do is grab your bank statements and your credit card statements or your debit card statements, put all that data into a spreadsheet, and then have a look and have a really good look where your money's flowing to, right? And where the money is flowing to is either going to fit into, is it essential, right? Is it a like, or is it a want, right? So then you can classify it. And the easiest thing to do there is use a traffic light system. Essential, green, must have, must spend, right? A like, make it orange. And a want, make it red, right? And if you do that and then put it all together and work out, you know, where your money's spending, where you're going, how much you've got here and that, the other, you'll quickly work out how to streamline what you're spending and streamline where all your money's going. So.
Yeah, definitely. I like that. It's just pretty much making it a lot more easy, and prioritizing and cutting out the ones that are in the red zone is what you'd really do. And then the ones which are orange, you'd more monitor, decide which ones will be essential and which ones can be cut out.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, really easy.
And then we have this one here as well. One of your other notes as well is pretty much, getting the credit card statement and using it, build up the budget. So yeah.
Yeah, work backwards. So work backwards from where you are, right? So take past history. Don't try and build a budget forward, right? Build a budget based on what you're spending now and then adjusting going forward, right? Because if you try to make something from scratch, it'll never happen.
Yeah, and for anyone who's done business courses or just investment in general, you'll probably hear that a lot, is always start with the end in mind and then reverse engineer from there. So that's really all that is when we say working backwards.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all of the questions I had for you, Stephen. And there's a couple we have here. So if anyone in the audience has any questions, this is your time to go through it, because we'll put aside some time to actually go through questions properly and whatnot. So I noticed in the comments as well that there were a lot of people agreeing with you, Stephen, especially on the car thing. For years, I had a fully paid Ford VA station wagon, well surfaced and runs like a dream, and people were telling me to get rid of it. So yeah, that's good. A lot of people agreeing. The first question we have here for you, Stephen, is from Mel. I want to do all of this for one of my employees. Are there any bank accounts that don't charge the $10 monthly bank fees for numerous accounts?
Yeah, and that's why sometimes I say it's easier to open 3 different accounts at, say, 3 different banks, because some banks will charge you, a $5 fee for a secondary account and all that sort of stuff. And if your banks do that move, you just find another bank. So I have a bank account with Suncorp. There's no fees on that. My personal Westpac account has no fees on it, and my ANZ account has no fees on it. So go and ask the banks and say, I want a personal account. I'm going to do this, this, and this, and I want a no-fee account. They're out there.
Yeah. Next question here is from Jeff. Interest rates you pay should determine how you budget. Is that right?
What was that?
Interest rates you pay should determine how you budget.
Yes and no. It can come down to the terms and conditions on the interest rate. So you might have a very, very low interest rate, but it's calculated daily versus one that's calculated monthly. And so sometimes it comes down to what's the easiest to pay off. Sometimes it could be very easy to pay off a low interest loan because it's only like, say, 5,000 versus 20,000, because then you can actually use that money to double down on your other payments. So not always, but yes, you definitely need to be taking into consideration your interest rate on whatever product, debt product you have.
Yeah, and next question here is from Robin. I think this is more getting your opinion on this, but is there any chance that this type of sensible information and budgeting be taught in schools and even homeschooling programs?
So I know a lot of this is taught in homeschooling, and people like Dr. Ron Paul in the US that have a homeschooling program have this sort of stuff built into it. There's a couple of other homeschooling programs I know out of Europe that are used in Asia that have this sort of stuff into it. So yes, some of it is inbuilt in the homeschooling. It will, in my opinion, it'll never go into the mainstream schooling system because they pretty much want people addicted to banks and bank debt. The great Australian dream of getting yourself super indebted to a bank with a mortgage. So.
And I think a lot of schools are more interested to teach people about all the transgenderism stuff that's going on than they do of teaching people to get money.
100% at the moment, yeah. Everything's about, there is 14 different genders. Well, I don't think so.
Yeah, and then 38 different sexualities or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but that question reminds me of a video which Robert Kiyosaki did, the one Keeping You Poor. So if you haven't watched that, that's a really good video in my opinion. It's like a 10-minute interview with Robert Kiyosaki where he talks about how the school system was actually designed to keep people poor because governments obviously want people reliant on them and feeding into that system.
100%, yeah.
But that seems to be all the questions that people have. So that pretty much wraps it up, I guess. What I'll do now is I'm going to be sharing about a workshop we're running for those of you that actually want further guidance to put this together. If all you came here for was to get Stephen's insight onto this, then that's pretty much the end of the interview. But and we do really thank you guys for showing up and coming to this. It's really great to see the show up because money management is such a crucial topic. It's not just for younger people, or even for older people or people around mid-age or later on. Regardless of age, this is a topic that if you can get on top of it, your retirement or your life in the later coming years is going to be so much better. I know for me, it's especially important because I know that being young, is something that getting on top of will make a big difference. And when you've got a recession just around the corner, yeah, who knows what it's going to lead to. So money management is going to be so good. So if that's all you came here for, really want to thank you for your time. And as usual, Stephen, really want to thank you for sharing your insight because I know you've studied this a lot. You've had your own experiences, which kind of gave you this knowledge to share with people. And no doubt, I'm sure everyone appreciates it. So thanks, guys, for attending. But for those of you that actually are interested to go further and learn more about how you can actually practically put this together, because it's one thing to learn all this stuff, but we all know action is a completely different story. This is going to be for people who want more practical steps to bring it together. But I'm hoping at least a lot of people here kind of have their own idea of what practical action steps they're going to take from this, because there was a lot of great tips in here and a lot of great practical things that you can go out and do. But for people who kind of need a bit more guidance or need a bit more hand holding to how you can do it, like, for example, set up multiple bank accounts or how you can actually create a budget for yourself, like the actual practical steps and facilitating through that. If you're actually looking for steps, what we're doing is we're running a 4-hour workshop on the 29th of April. That's going to be great for people who want more practical guidance and facilitation to do that. Because I know when I first started out, the idea of creating my budget and getting the list of expenses together, organizing it into multiple bank accounts was a pretty overwhelming topic. When I was first starting out, that was just my personal take on it. I know a lot of people who are in a similar position as well. We get a lot of feedback from members who kind of need that more guidance. So if you do want that more help, you're wanting more structure in your finances, this workshop is going to be great for you. I'm not going to spend too much time going through this because we do have a lot more information on the page. Worksheets, like I said, are going to be provided by a certified financial planner, where the idea of it is to guide you through this whole process. Everything that was covered today, we're going to actually be walking you through the practical steps to help you get a plan together and be able to walk away with some clear action plan. The workshop is only $127, so standard tickets are going to be $150. For Global Wealth Club members, it's actually going to be free. You can make your own decision whether this is suitable for you. So what I'll do is I'll put the link in the chat for you guys to have a look through, and that's the link there. So what I need to do is actually get it up. So I'll quit sharing my screen. But while I do that, did you have any final words to share with everyone on money management, Stephen?
No. Look, I think I've said a lot of it, but I would really encourage everyone to go and take one of the things that would come up tonight, and actually just go and do it. You know, whether it's go and sell something, whether it's clean out a closet, whether it's split your bank account into two, just do something. Because small actions that you do all the time become part of your life. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just had a comment come there from the Q&A box, Stephen. I feel sorry for anyone who does not do things like Stephen said, as it's common sense.
That's all it is. But common sense is not so common anymore.
Yeah, no, that's one of the best sayings. A lot of people just don't have it. And unfortunately, it's just because from young people weren't taught basic things like this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's pretty much it from me. I've put the link in the chat for anyone who wants to check it out. Global Wealth Club members who are paid for either the Ignite or Accelerate or Higher, you guys do come for free. So all you need to do is email support@globalwealthclub.com if you want to come to that workshop. And for everyone else, though, more details are in that link there. So, Yeah, I really enjoyed this session, Stephen. Hopefully everyone took a lot of value based on the feedback coming through. It seems like a lot of people really took some value out of that, and hopefully it was as simple as possible. That's what we actually aim to do. We wanted to make this really simple for you guys, so hopefully we achieved that. I missed most of this. Will this be up on YouTube? Yeah, this will either be up on YouTube or the membership site. Either way, we'll send out a replay to everyone who registered, and you'll be able to catch up on the full replay. So, yeah, that's it from me. Any final words from you, Stephen, before we wrap it up?
That's it for me.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, we'll post it on Telegram, but we'll share the link to the email or Telegram, one of those, but it'll, yeah, one way or the other will be uploaded and shared.
Excellent. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.